Jacksonville, a child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history in this land of flowers.
On the 21st of April 2018, the week that was on WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Very interesting week it was in terms of international developments, also in the domestic scene, with Starbucks and racial profiling came front and center, and the issue of Starbucks went from a matter in Philadelphia to a nationwide story and then to an international story. And it's very interesting to see how racial profiling simply to African American men arriving at the Starbucks there in Philadelphia. They were in there just a matter of minutes. The manager immediately called the police. The police arrive, arrest these men. They fear for their lives. And as it turned out, very interesting situation. These were real estate brokers that had been working on a real estate matter. But they were arrested because of the color of their skin in 2018. And how does this fit into the action on the Korean Peninsula? One thing to remember that the conflicts since the Great War, that would be World War II, have been against people of color nations, whether it be Vietnam. And this is pursuing the Woodrow Wilson racist foreign policy. And that was in Asia. And then, of course, prior to Vietnam, the Korean conflict that is still ongoing. Korea, another people of color nation. And this is the problem, a very big problem in itself. How these nations grapple with the new realities just simply not sustainable. And this is the problem with the whole U.S.-Chinese trade dynamic. You see these so-called sanctions, the same thing as what happened in Philadelphia against these people of color nations. And these sanctions can only work when a nation is dependent on one of these so-called industrial first world type nations. And that is the relationship. It's a Tarzan Jane relationship, as Jesse Jackson would call it. And this is the whole thing that's not sustainable. We had a flotilla this week with grain, sorghum, on its way to China. A lot of the grain there was from the grain giant Cargill. Had to turn around literally in the sea because of the Chinese tariffs. Now, when you start a war, a tariff war, a trade war, what do you want to call it, back to the smoot tariffs in years bygone. But those were successful in a much smaller economy. And this is a problem you have with America First. America First is set up, is echoing the 1920s and 30s. Well, we're not in the 20s, nor are we in the 30s. Period. China had their revolution in 1949. So it's a new dynamic, and people are amazed how quickly the Chinese were able to move forward from industrialization, literally from horse-drawn carriages carrying some of their munitions to thoroughly modern munitions. Now, China has a plan called 2025, that it will be virtually independent of any of these nations by simply using their 1.2 would probably be 1.3 billion people as an internal trading dynamic, in addition to their new trading partners across Asia, Africa, etc. Now that would cut the West out of the pie in more than one way. If you look at what is developed in so-called Silicon Valley, where you have roughly almost 80% of the people there that are doing quote-unquote technology, whether it be machine learning, etc., artificial intelligence, which goes into the new autonomous automobiles, buses, etc. Those people were born outside the U.S., or they are offsprings of people that were born outside the U.S. What this means is the U.S. has been out of the education business basically since Ronald Reagan, a long time. And this is, I was talking with a gentleman, I suppose this week, didn't understand the concept of lifelong learning. Well, what has happened now, we had a very interesting data mining class out at Berkeley. Over 1,000 people attended it. Now it is available online. You can take the course. I'm taking the course. If you want credit for it, it'll cost you $100. Now, with these emergence of various online courses, whether they be certificates or they be degree programs, the University of, I believe, South or North Carolina, I always get those mixed up, offers an IT program, the same basic principle. You can take the course without cost. If you want credit for the course, then you charge a nominal fee, but a very discounted fee that, in fact, AT&T is sending their workers, their IT people, to the course. And this is one of the things that's happening now. These are not in classroom. These are courses that are online. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, otherwise known as MIT, has many of their courses online. Now, some of these courses are from 1 or 2 years ago, but it doesn't matter that much because you can find out the textbooks that are used in the courses, and after you take the courses, do the exercises, you're prepared to move forward. And this is a world that these people face with the backdrop. Back to Thor Hartman, and we recommend that you tune into his programs. He was talking about the affair in Philadelphia and this whole mindset of these First Nation people, not First Nation, excuse me, America First people, and their use of a race animus and also a sex animus. The whole idea is to keep women out of the workplace. Well, it has partially worked, but that is not sustainable either. It just will not happen. They buy themselves a few years, but it's just not happening. The changing demographics of the U.S., particularly in many of the states where California and Texas, where they're very large pools of Latinos that are not being properly educated at this point in time. That will have to occur. They literally will not have an education system in those states. Now, this whole idea of sending people to law school, medical school, etc., from the present majority racial dynamic, that is primarily Europeans scattering with Asians, etc., particularly in the medical sciences, but not including other people of color, is just simply not sustainable. There's an article in ESPN, we'll get into a little bit of it today, about African American managers on our new program, all about sport. We'll go into depth. It's a nice study there, and we'll have time to properly deal with it. But to the Korean Peninsula now, as we look at the foreign policy, Field Marshal has announced that the Korean Democratic Republic will pursue economic growth and peace. Thus, they have immediately suspended nuclear and missile tests, and they plan to scrap one of their nuclear testing sites. And the rationale behind this is not the first time it's been done. If you recall, Libya, under the administration of Colonel Gaddafi, scrapped it. In fact, they actually shipped their weaponry to the people at Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and literally moved on. But the problem was the Libyans did not have a guarantee of security. You can't do that without a guarantee of security. Now, we assume the guarantors of the Korean security are the Chinese and the Russian Federation, because they have to have guarantors. People that, with treaties, that if the West, the same cabal of characters, the UK and France and the US interfere or try to attack them, they will themselves be attacked. You are seeing more and more scenarios as in Syria. The Mideast itself should not be what it is at this present time, and the only reason it is because of a proxy state there called Israel that has been able to get away with genocide on the Palestinian people for decades. That has to come to an end, and it relates back to Starbucks and this whole idea of racial profiling, etc. As people get more energized, as people become more active, and this is what this is all about. And in the U.S., we commend the administration of D.J. Trump for moving on the Korean Peninsula, a move that his predecessors had not been able to do. Now, this will set up, they've also announced that the Korean people themselves will start talking about how to unify the peninsula. Now, those are some of the issues there. What will happen to the U.S. troops at this stage? They're not even talking about that, but they're becoming more obsolete by the day. And this is a whole problem. The Mideast is a very big problem. It's an economic problem. And what you have is outmoded systems there, particularly in the various Arab countries, their governance. I noticed from the reading today, the motion picture cinema there in Saudi Arabia has opened up, and they are screening the Black Panther there. So in other words, you're now including women in driving of automobiles or motor cars. Small steps, but steps that are moving forward. Progress is being made. And one of the problems here, when you start to make progress, it doesn't gradually come out. It comes out in lumps. And this is what's starting to happen in the U.S. There's a dialogue beyond Starbucks, because as Thor said, it goes to Hooters, I think in a restaurant somebody was having a birthday party there, and there was a 3-year-old child there, and he wandered over, and some bigot spat on the child. And then when the grandfather went in, he claimed he'd spat on him, and when the police came, he said, well, I'm a firefighter. He was suspended, and according to reports, he's now back at work. But this is just totally unacceptable in 2018. So what has to happen is it goes beyond just a Starbucks establishment. These postings, letters that people can be arrested there without a due process has been litigated before, but now they are on the forefront. All of this stuff is moving there, whether it be the affairs with Stormy Daniels or various other things. And these things come up. Haven't heard as much on the Me Too movement, but again, you can't institutionalize a movement and think it will go away. It will not go away, as you tend to get a worldwide publicity. And Starbucks, of course, is an international organization. And if people in Europe don't buy their product, they have some problems. And if enough people don't buy it, and incidentally, we do encourage you to boycott Starbucks, as a professor there in Chicago was also talking about it on the Facebook. Professor Jackson, I get Professor Jackson right. He does yeoman work there in Chicago on education issues. But this is how this all ties up, and this was reported from the Korean Central News Agency. So they are preparing now for the summit with DJ Trump, is to create an international environment favorable for its economy. It would facilitate close contact and actual dialogue with neighboring countries and the international community, which is a key. But to do that, you have to move past the Wilsonian foreign policy, which is a racist foreign policy, and you saw that with these old colonial nations, i.e. France and the UK. That's why UK was able to get Brexit in because of racism. And in France, with the racist troubles they had in these right-wing administrations. But this stuff does not work. Now you have the increasing dynamic coming out of the Mideast, increase in prices of petrol. Won't spend any more time on this, but we'll move along rather quickly here. The Democratic Party is suing. This is a repeat of the suit filed by Larry O'Brien against the Republican Party on the Tricky Dick. So now they are suing the Russian government, the U.S. President's campaign, and WikiLeaks. I'm not sure why they're suing WikiLeaks, but anyway, neither here nor there. That suit was filed in Manhattan in district court. And what they're saying is the Trump campaign conspired with the Russian government and its military spy agencies to hurt the Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. It alleges that the Trump campaign gleefully welcomed Russian help in 2016. That will draw upon accused of being a racketeering. I'm just wondering if they're RICO in there. I got to get the lawsuit, and we'll report back to you on that. During the 2016 campaign, Russia launched an all-out assault on our democracy, and it found a willing and active partner in DJ Trump's campaign. That's from Tom Perez. He's the chair. This would be good news in that we now counter for the DNC server that they refused to give to the FBI. The Wendy Wasserman Schultz server and documents held by a Pakistani mystery man and Clinton emails. Trump, a Republican, wrote now. The suit prompted Trump to send an evening tweet, calling the Democrats obstructionists and promised a counterattack based on his long-standing assertion that the Clinton committed a crime with her personal email server. Trump appeared to be referring to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who stole the election incidentally from Bernie Sanders, who chaired the DNC when its servers were hacked. And a Pakistani information technology worker found by the House of Representatives Inspector General to have inappropriately accessed congressional data. Not sure of this whole story here. Defendants in the lawsuit include, people indicted by the special prosecutor. Let's see. Manafort here, George Papandopoulos there, and several others. So this is kind of a rehash in open court. The process of legal discovery. Lawyers for the Democratic Party can force, no doubt, to produce documents they say related to the collusion. That will happen in the discovery process, and you can bet they will ask for all of those. Judge sees gaping holes in Trump lawyers' bid to delay Stormy Daniels' lawsuit. That's in Los Angeles. A federal judge signaled possible shortcomings in a request by Trump's personal lawyer to delay the adult film actress, I don't know why they put that, in Stormy Daniels' lawsuit over her alleged affair with the president. Daniels, whose name is Stephanie Clifford, and the $130,000 payment report follows what the judge told Cohen's lawyer, Brent Blakely, that there are some gaping holes in the request for a stay. He's actually what he's wanting is a stay here. More than likely, the stay will not be granted, and if it's not granted, the trial could go on. As we move around here, let's do one more here out of Missouri. We have more on this. The governor of Missouri, Eric Grantons, has been charged with another felony, a big feud between he and the Republican Attorney General with a felony computer tampering tied to his political fundraising. Gratton's, Gratton's. Anyway, Gatton's Republican under pressure from politicians in Missouri to simply resign. Former Navy SEAL type said the people will know the truth. That's what he says. But what he doesn't understand is, and he should, in the legal process is one thing, but the political process is another. He has been damaged, no doubt about that. So now this lawsuit has stayed in the headlines, and it involves a charity, a whole bunch of things here. Handbook and its non-disclosure agreement prohibits discovery of its donors list and the retention by anyone not employed by or working on behalf of the Missouri continues. The probable cause statement says evidently he was able to grab the fundraising list there, and he's got problems. The other problem was photographing a woman without her permission. So this sort of goes around and around here, period. Let me just finish this part up here. This is on lawsuits, trailer park brawls. Have the alt-right peaked? Well, if we look at such things as what happened at Starbucks, it is not peaked. The alt-right fellow travelers, we'll call them. Not particularly card-carrying members, but they exist all over the country, like the firefighter, etc. But as more and more of them get exposed, then what starts to happen is there's more pressure on the Hooters, the Starbucks of the world, various other places. Not so much Hooters, but the Starbucks of the places and other national chains that have similar policies. And that even goes into local bars. We covered an incident out in the very red state of Oklahoma. Some character there that refused, and they haven't got any more on that, refused to serve African Americans. He'd existed there forever. The state said, well, there'd been no complaint, therefore we, Human Rights Department, couldn't do anything about it, or didn't do anything about it. And it was in a place, Enid, Oklahoma, which had a military reservation, Air Force base, or whatever. And people from the base were banned from going to his particular bar slash barbecue joint, basically speaking. So we'll have to check back and see exactly where that ended up. But this was one small-time character. But there are millions of these so-called small-time characters that affect. In other words, if he were just a barbecue joint, that a bunch of rednecks were sitting around there, but they had a military reservation there. Thus, they brought in a diversified population, a different situation. And I think the city was, 40,000 or whatever. But you have a lot of those outposts. But not only that, you have similar establishments in, say, Chicago, Philadelphia, particularly places that police types frequent. They used to be called police bars. They're still there, and saloons. But they frequent are like where the so-called firefighter was. Well, those places are there, and the policies have not been updated to 2018 standards. And as more publicity comes out, particularly with Starbucks, they're going to close in May, one day there, for a few hours, literally to have, quote-unquote, diversity training. But it's beyond diversity training. They're going to be sued, obviously, in Philadelphia, and it will no doubt spawn other lawsuits. And this is not the kind of publicity that Starbucks would like to have, because now people are boycotting their products and boycotting their coffee shops. And there are a lot of coffee shops out in America. Let me get to this problem here. This is after Charlottesville. We had that when we had the University of Virginia there. Ended in the death. Of course, that was Heather Heyer. We always commend her on our program. The problems have been mounting: lawsuits, arrests, fundraising difficulties, widespread infighting, fierce counter protests, banishment from social media platforms. Taken all together, they've exhausted so many of their staunch members. One of the movement's biggest groups, Traditionalist Workers' Party, dissolved in March. Andrew Anglin, the founder of the Daily Stormer, the largest alt-right site, has gone into hiding, chased by a lawsuit. Richard Spence, the far right's most public figure, canceled a college speaking tour and was abandoned by his attorney last month. So in other words, all these things, the Daily Stormer used to be a very, very big site, and now it's out of business. The owner of it is hiding out, and that's the state of affairs. But one has to remember, these alt-right groups, the Daily Stormer and recruiting things, serve their purpose. They no longer need them. They've become national now. They're at the White House. Now, how long they will be able to stay at the White House, we don't know at this point in time. But Bannon, although he's been vanished officially, still can slip in the side door, so to speak. The question is whether there's going to be a third act, Spencer says, who coined the term of the movement, which rose to prominence during the campaign of DJ Trump. Overall, the number of neo-Nazi groups increased in the U.S. in 2017 from 99 to 121, probably actually more than that, as according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. The number is likely to decrease this year. Well, it probably will decrease, but it always has been increasing, decreasing, period. And many times articles like this can be taken incorrectly. The alt-right's downward spiral, we talked about that. That is Marilyn Mayo, who studied hate groups for the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremists. He said one of the largest so-called identity groups, Identity Europe, which targets college-age men, is less extreme in rhetoric and has turned away from the alt-right label. He said, well, doesn't matter. Identity Europe, same scam. Perhaps the best month for the group. March was a phenomenal month for Identity Europe, perhaps our best month. That is from Derek Baker. Well, Identity Europe's the same old scheme. It's just that they've changed their name. 3% of Americans surveyed this winter as a part of Washington Post. Kaiser Family Foundation said they support the alt-right, our white nationalist movement. Now, that's 3% in a poll, but you could look at it probably 10%. The death of Hiroshimaana, we talked about that, has caused a lot of rethinking, particularly in places like Charlottesville, Virginia, not far from Robert E. Lee's house. And the article goes on, DJ Trump's reluctance to disown white nationalists, focused on a degree of security on the movement, but hasn't known until then. People started being fired from their jobs. Families disowned their kids. Fundraising websites dropped, making it difficult to raise money. And, of course, reporters there. Chris Cantwell, a white nationalist radio, I remember him, featured in a Vice video about the march, was viewed by millions. Wept in the video. He posted to the internet, proclaiming himself terrified after the Charlotte police issued a warrant for his arrest. Oh, boy. On charges of using tear gas on protesters, the Daily Storm was dropped. Stormer. Yeah, they were dropped. They went to a Russian site. I don't know what happened to them there. But some of the members gave up the movement entirely. I got to go back to my normal life as Connor Perrin, who drove all night from Austin to Charlottesville. My mother is like, stop being alt-right anyway, whatever. Just because some of these people drop out of the movement doesn't mean that they don't have the same type of situation going. The National Alliance for decades was the nation's best organized and perhaps most powerful white supremacist group, succumbing to infighting, rapid decline after the death of its leader, William Pierce. Yeah, he was out in Idaho. History of Klan 2, the FBI destroyed the Klan. What has happened in American history, whether it be the Klan or these various white supremacist movements, they've been used to organize the working class for other ventures, such as the Republican Party. Thor Hartman was correct about this, and the Republicans have fanned this. The Traditionalist Workers' Party, which at its height operated in 8 states, had 1,200 paying members, according to its leaders. They probably had a lot more than that, but weren't paying. Reported to regional commanders, in turn reported to the top leadership. But Humbard began sleeping with her parents' wife anyway. That's just kind of a side thing there that does in these groups, and it's also done in a lot of left-wing groups. I'm unplugged from politics. Parrott said, I am done. I'm out. I don't want to be in the Washington Post anymore. I don't care to have this humiliating, terrifying ordeal be more public than it is already. There is no more traditionalist work. So that is where alt-right stands. Whatever you want to say. Let me just move here to Karl Rove. His tribute. We reported on Walter Leroy Moody. He was executed. He killed a judge named Robert Vance in 1998. In Alabama, they gave him the chemical chair, and that was the end of him. One of the events that happened this week. And cracks in support of the Scott Pruitt character. He's outlived his usefulness. The whole storyline here is that people like John Bozeman of Arkansas, Representative Trent Gowdy of South Carolina, Jody Ernest of Iowa, and Bill Hopalong Cassidy, those people have all turned against him. But again, he has, as they say, upheld the interests of the fossil fuel industry. They'll just find another person there. Bozeman wants to see him. John Cornyn of Texas just says, that Pruitt was just fine on policy, but obviously his controversy continues to swirl, and it needs to be resolved. Senator Lisa Murkowski, she's from Alaska, chair of the Senate's Energy Committee, said she intends to summit old Pruitt there. It won't be too much of summits in old Pruitt, because Pruitt will be gone shortly. Period. Pruitt is caught in a barrage of questions surrounding his illegal purchase of an office phone booth, his expenditures on travel. I mean, just a long list of schemes he'd spend on a secure phone booth, $43,000 for that phone booth. Let me get that right here. I don't know why he needed that. Who knows? So thus, he's mirroring the case of Tom Price. Most people have forgotten about. He was a former Secretary of Health, Education, and Health and Human Services. I guess they changed the name there. So he's long gone. Also, so these people. This is from the New York Times, incidentally. From Wacker of Mississippi until Ohio Step, I think he's the best EPA director we've ever had. Doesn't say very much, does it? Last week, a group of 21 conservative group with 21 conservative groups wrote a letter to DJ Trump, precisely because of Pruitt's record of leadership and radical environmentalists and the biased media trying to force him out of office. Well, he's on his way. The early version of Tom DeLay. He's a former majority, not a former speaker. Anyway, little Tom himself was also forced out of office. There. New York Times has a big headline here also on Democratic Republic of Korea. And Cohen said he'd take a bullet for Trump, maybe not anymore. There's a strong possibility that old Michael Cohen could end up cooperating. And this is what happens with particularly civil lawyers, that they tend to get very scared of going to jail, in other words. Period. And he could turn, as they say, snitch on old DJ. Rights charges sought in police killing of Eric Gardner. That is a very important situation there. And the attorney of Stormy Daniels, who reached a Moldova agreement with Cohen, has been cooperating with the feds. Not very good news there. let's get to Eric Garner's story, and we'll go to where did we miss it here? Somewhere. We'll do that story, then we'll go to whoops. I have an article even on Prince, the musicians, close associates who were fiercely protective of him, said that they have no inkling of his painkiller addiction. No charges in that particular case. The one we want to look at here is the Eric Garner case. I looked at some stories earlier here, and we'll talk more about this on the Monday Morning Quarterback. Charges are sought in that, but justice officials have doubts. Federal civil rights prosecutors have recommended charges against the New York police officer in the death of Eric Garner, but three current and former officials say, but the top Justice Department officials have expressed strong reservations about whether to move forward with a case they say may not be winnable. Of course, he died on Staten Island, and after that, the Daniel Pantaleo chokehold there. I think Pantaleo, let's see, charge against sought approval from Deputy Attorney General. In recent weeks' career, prosecutors recommended civil rights charges against Pantaleo and sought approval from the Deputy Attorney General, this Rod Rothstein, to seek an indictment. According to Rothstein, convened several meetings that revealed divisions within the Department of Justice, no doubt about it. Beauregard Sessions has been briefed on the case and could weigh in. No doubt he will weigh in on the wrong side of the issue. Death of Eric Garner and Michael Brown and several other high-profiled ignited significant debate in the use of force, which goes back to the hero Rodney King. Incidentally, we did a special on Rodney King. You can go and find that. I know on the Blog Talk site it is there. Gwen Carr said Friday the Department of Justice has promised to tell her when a decision was made, but I haven't heard anything. She said, I am hopeful, but we never know until there's a decision. She's done a yeoman's job there. They have a picture of this Daniel Pantaleo character. And I believe he's still working as a... It's been a long road for Paulino and a very frustrating one. That's according to his attorney. There has been the confidence that he'll never buy. Well, anyway, all this stuff here. Yeah. Paulino literally got away with murder. Lynch was less certain and deliberated for months before allowing it to move forward. Law enforcement officers, including some on both sides of the case, acknowledged serious challenges with the case when he was Attorney General. Eric Holder said the evidence clearly justified an indictment, but he acknowledged prosecutors might lose the case. Well, that can happen. The statute's not very strong. The police officer lied and claimed he didn't intend to do that during the struggle. Has been on desk duty. Oh, okay, he's on desk duty while the police department's internal affairs inquiry of him has been completed. The results were unknown. The police officers are waiting to mete out any potential discipline up to including termination until the federal government resolves its case. So this is where we end that. Let's go quickly to Uncle Carl Rove. This is on Barbara Bush. We won't spend a lot of time. She's passed at 92. Naturally, the table conversation revolved around a remarkable woman. This is Uncle Carl wrote, writing in the Wall Street Journal on the 19th of April. You becoming the massive reflection of Mrs. Bush, personality and prepared, prompt, directly, and thoughtful. An email also had a picture of Mrs. Bush's gray hair, etc. there, and when we think of the greatest generation, eternal values often spring to mind. Young men in unimaginable violent struggle, saving the civilization from the civilized world, men like George H.W. Bush, who joined the Navy on his 18th birthday and served as a torpedo bomber pilot there, and was later shot down in the Pacific. So they were in real wars. He first met, this is Uncle Carl, at a Christmas party. They met, and she was 16 there anyway. They've been married a very, very long time. Loyalty brought out the best in everyone around. I first met Miss Bush when I was, Mrs. Bush when I was 22, working for her husband, been the Republican National Committee chair. Decades later, toiling for her son at the White House, I was still nervous whether she felt I was giving it my best. Long before she said, as First Lady, what happens in your house is more important than what happens in the White House. Okay. Anyway, Mrs. Bush, the right things always evolved around service to others. Her most visible cause was literacy, and she inspired me and millions to provide a window to the larger world of imagination, knowledge, and beauty by helping someone learn to read. Very good situation there. She also held an AIDS, a baby affected with AIDS, HIV, in her arms. May not be seen like much now, but at the time, no doubt about it. This is during the Reagan administration. People were terrified that you could literally catch it walking down the street. Let's do the sports now, and we'll wind up our report here. On to ESPN. And on the state of African American managers in the Major League would discuss Jackie Robinson. This is by, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, the last name is Walker. We examined the numbers since Jackie Robinson called out the NBA in the 1972 World Series. A memorable World Series there. Anyway, we'll get back to that. The NBA scores last night. The Cavaliers were at the Pacers, in which they were still in Cleveland. 92-90 was the final score. And let's see. Indiana leads 2-1 in that series. And then we have the Raptors and the Wizards. The Wizards finally had some wizardry here. 121-103. And the Celtics and Bucks in Milwaukee. The Bucks win 116-97. And let's see here. Trying to catch the series here. Well, let's see here. Well, no doubt about that. 2-1 in the playoffs. Okay. Make sure we had that right. And to I think we got everybody there. We did. Okay. To Major League Baseball, in 10 more of these extra inning games, the Royals were in the Motor City Tigers 3-2. Cleveland was in Camden Yards. The Orioles finally win a game 3-1. The Blue Jays were in New York. Blue Jays 8-3 over the Yankees. And the Pirates and Phillies. Phillies pull that one out 2-1. And again in 10 in Florida, the Twins and the Rays. Rays 8-7. That's in 10. And the second part of the doubleheader in the Motor City, the Royals 3-2 over the Tigers. In another game in 12, the Mets in Atlanta. They drove Dixie down there. 5-3 was the final score. The Mariners were in Texas. Mariners 6-2. The Astros and White Sox on the south side of Chicago, and they shut out the Sox 10-0. The Marlins and Brewers in Milwaukee. Marlins were shut out there. I guess the Brewers didn't get their normal ration of beer, 8-0. The Reds and Cardinals in St. Louis. Cardinals 4-2. Mr. Walker was the winner. Mr. Flanagan was the loser. Mr. Norris got the save. The Cubbies and Rockies out in Denver. An explosion there. Cubbies 16-5. Cubbies had 8 hits, no errors. And the Rockies 11 hits and 2 errors. High scoring game there. Mr. Kendrick was the winner. Mr. Gray was the loser. And the Padres and D-backs in Arizona. Padres are 4-1. The Red Sox and Athletics in Oakland. Sox win that one 7-3. Vasquez was the winner there. Giants and Angels. Giants 8-1. Giants finally pull a game out there. And Mr. Rodney, wait a minute here. No, it was not. Mr. Samardzin was the winner there. Anyway, the Nationals and Dodgers in Los Angeles. Dodgers, another loss there. Mr. Kershaw took a loss. And Mr. Doolittle, I remember Doolittle. Anyway, the Nationals are 5-2 there. And the National Hockey League, the playoffs go on over there also. The Flyers defeated the Penguins, and let's see where that series is. Game 5. The Penguins lead the series 3-2 in that series. The Wild and the Jets, the Wild are no more. The Jets closed out the Wild 6-0. And it was sayonara time. The Avalanche and Predators, it was the Avalanche 2-1 there. Colorado Avalanche and the Predators of Nashville. And let's see, that was game 5. It's the first round. The Predators lead that 3-2. And the Jets win that series. And the Penguins lead 3-2 there. And game 5. Okay. I see. This is the first round game. Game 5 there. So we have one more game to go, I suppose, is the way that goes. Anyway, the Jets had 4-1. Anyway, that was the end of that story right there. And this will do it for us. We have a Numbers Man report coming up. That's our macroeconomics program that we do with Cranston Analytics. We also have an open source report that we do with Cranston Software. Those are two technical, I guess you'd say, reports. And we have the Monday morning quarterback. That'll be on Monday morning, where we'll sort everything out, including the National Hockey League, the NBA's playoffs, and, of course, Major League Baseball, and the struggle goes on. just the start of the year. Still playing. They were playing out in Denver in the rain. The Cubbies were. So yeah, a lot of bad weather this time of the year. There didn't call the game. So it went on, but it was a pounder, which it usually happens out in the Mile High City. No lead is secure. Sunday program, a couple of things. We got a Puerto Rican thing we just about finished. I'm not certain if we'll get to James Kumi episode out yet or not. We're reading the book by the former FBI director, but I'm not certain where we'll get with that. Anyway, have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on the Monday Morning Quarterback. Good day.